Okay, guys, great to see you. Hashem, we woke up today. Thank God. We can't take that for granted. We can see so that we can look at these beautiful svarim, and then we can hear the words of the Tzaddik, the kol shofar, the sound of the shofar blast. Bezrat Hashem, that it should wake us up and bring us a lot of joy, a lot of emunah, a lot of achdut, oneness with each other, unity with each other, and love for Hashem, and should bring us reconciliation, as we're struggling with these difficult times, to give us hope for the future and for the present. B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to now finish this halacha, our fourth halacha in Likuyet Halachot, which is very exciting. If you guys are with me, I dance with you, but because I'm here alone, I'm going to save it for after the class. And then B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to go over the key points from this halacha, and we'll take questions, okay? So this is the last part of the story of Yosef, to try to explain what is it about Yosef that makes him the Tzaddik Emet? What is it about him that makes him this concept of the true Tzaddik? That it's through him that all of the revelation of Hashem comes into the world, and it's specifically through him as well that we bring Geula. Like there's a song of Yosef Karduner that he made based off of Rabbi Nachman's lessons, that Biat Mashiach, the coming of Mashiach, to Louis is dependent on Hitkarvut LeTzadik, attachment and closeness to the Tzaddik. And the reason why, in a simple way, or as simple as possible, is that the Mashiach represents Malchut. Malchut is the Shekhinah. And it's taught in Kabbalah that Moshe is always with the Shekhinah, meaning that the true Tzaddik is always with the Shekhinah. So to the degree in which you're close to the Tzaddik, to that degree you're closer to Mashiach. And on a deeper level, Yesod and Malchut, that is the Tzaddik and the Mashiach, they are actually, so to speak, like husband and wife. And so therefore, B'ezrat Hashem, with their ability to connect to the Tzaddik, to that degree we experience Mashiach. And that's the reason why many people, even before the Mashiach has come, already has, so to speak, experienced their own unique individual Geula from being close to Rabbi Nachman. Because with him, the Yesod comes along the Malchut. With the Tzaddik Emet comes along the Mashiach, the Geula. V'zechu v'hinei hashemesh v'yarech achad asa kochavim ishtachavim. So Yosef, he now comes and he brings his brothers a second dream. That is that the sun, the moon, and all 11 stars are going to bow down to me. Shemesh v'yareach hem bechinat mashpia u'mekabel. The sun and the moon represent the giver and the receiver. Bechinat seichel yom v'seichel tachton. The concept of higher consciousness and lower consciousness. Bechinat rav v'talmid. The concept of a rabbi, a spiritual master, and his student. Ki tzaddik shehu rav. Because this spiritual master, the tzaddik, he's considered the rav. Nikra shemesh. He's the concept of the sun. Kamoshe katuv. V'zarach hashemesh uva hashemesh. That the sun rises and the sun sets. V'darshu b'teinu zal. And the Chazal, the sages, taught us in Masechet Kedushin, ad shelo shaka. That before just like when the sun sets, already the sun is going to rise. So too, we know that Hashem set up a system in place that because we always need a rabbi, that we always need a spiritual master, we always need the sun to give us life force, to give us energy, to give us a moon of faith, to give us connection to Hashem, devekud with Hashem. Therefore, we can never be without him. So Chazal teach that before the tzaddik passes away, there's already a tzaddik in line to take over. We learn this from Elia Cohen and Shmuel, that Elia Cohen, who was Shmuel's teacher, that before he set, meaning before he passed away, Shmuel of Ramah rose. And we know that Shmuel was equal to Moshe and Aaron together. The reason on a deeper level is because Shmuel is connected to the sphere of Yesod as well, that Shmuel is considered like the tzaddik Yesod Olam. And we know that Yesod is a combination, a harmony of the two spherot above it, that is Netzach and Hod, which is represented by Moshe and Aaron. And that's the reason why it says that Shmuel was equal to both of them. So we're learning that there always is this concept of the tzaddik in the world, because it has to be. We need him. And he's considered like the sun. And the Zohar also calls him Yom. He calls him the day, daytime. That Hashem called to the daytime Yom, meaning he called to the light in the world, to the revelation of Hashem in the world. He called it the Tzaddik. The Yarech Bechinat Talmid, and the moon is the concept of the student. Shemekabela or merabo kamo lavana me'achama, that it receives the light of his master like the moon receives from the sun. Now, if you look in the Likuyet Moharan, this is the whole essence of the very first Torah. That from the very beginning of the Likuyet Moharan, he's setting us up from this paradigm, this life-changing paradigm. That is that we are all connected, the concept of the moon. And the reason why we're all suffering tremendously, that we don't feel life force, that we don't feel joy, that we don't feel energy, that we don't feel faith, that we don't feel connection to something higher than us, that we don't feel alive, is actually because we are disconnected from our life source. Because the moon has all of its light from the sun. So already he's trying to give a window into why we feel so much depression and anxiety. Because we have no light of our own, so to speak, kivechol. And therefore, the only way that we should be filled up, that we shouldn't feel depressed, that we shouldn't feel anxious, that we should feel excited about life, that we should feel on fire, that we should feel motivated, that we should want to be close to Hashem. So the only way to do that is to reconnect to our source, that is to receive from the light of the sun. But the only way to do that is to know what the sun is to us, and that is the Tzaddik Emet. That is this concept of the genuine, authentic Tzaddik of the generation, that he is the root of our soul, that he is the sun to our moon. And therefore, once I know that, I can now do whatever it takes to connect to that place. Now, Rabbi Nachman, interestingly, in that lesson, he says that what's the key to, so to speak, linking this higher wisdom that's called Chokhmah, what we know is the revelation of the Tzaddik's mind into the lower wisdom, into Emunah, into faith, which it really is into us, to give us Emunah. And it's by learning Torah b'koach. Meaning, like right now, when we're learning Rabbi Nachman's Torah, that we're learning it with joy, we're learning it with simcha, we're learning it with energy, we're learning it early in the morning when everybody else is working. So this is called learning Torah b'koach. And by doing this, we now unite the lower wisdom, meaning our own personal emunah, with the higher wisdom that is the mind, the consciousness of the Tzaddik Yesod Olam. And this, Rabbi Nachman says, is our whole entire chiyuv. Because it is the responsibility of a Jew to be able to bring everything back to its source, to be able to see godliness in everything. And Rabbi Nachman is teaching us the chiddush which he emphasized more than anybody is our ability to do that is dependent. It's tilui. It's completely. It's an act which is necessitated by the fact that we have this deep attachment and connection to the Tzaddik, which we do by learning his Torah b'koach when it's difficult, when other people suggest to us not to, when we have to struggle and we have to show Mesirat Nefesh, self-sacrifice in order to learn it. So when we do that, we automatically attach ourselves to the Tzaddik, and as a result of that, we are able to see Hashem in everything in our life. And this is what Yosef was telling his brothers. I'm not coming here to replace anything. I'm not coming here to replace Yehuda, who we know is the Mashiach. I'm coming here to bring Yehuda, to reveal Yehuda. Because the Biat Mashiach, the coming of Mashiach, is dependent on Hikarvut, closeness to the Tzaddik. That is me. And that is that when everybody bows down to me, meaning when everybody has closeness to the Tzaddik by nullifying themselves to this figure which has attained spiritual and physical mastery in a way in which nobody else has, then as a result of that, this is going to bring the revelation of your own personal Geula and our collective Geula. And that is why the Shemesh, which is the sun, which is Keneged Yaakov, the truth, and the moon, the Yareach, that's Keneged Rachel, Yosef's mother, which is Keneged Malchut, which is Keneged Amunah, faith, and the 11 stars, which we know are Yosef's brothers, which are connected all of, so to speak, the faculties of the Jewish soul, they all have to bow down to Yosef, meaning to the Yesod, to the Brit. When all of them are subservient to Yosef HaTzadik, and that manifests itself in us by us, so to speak, sacrificing ourselves to achieve a high level of sexual purity, by not being what's called pagama brit. Then as a result of that, we are able to infuse the light of godliness into all of those levels of amunah, of faith, of emet, of truth, of chokhmah, of wisdom, all of the midot, of chesed, of love, of yira, of awe, of netzach, that we have boldness for the truth, hod, that we have gratitude, X, Y, and Z, and the list goes on and on. So this is this deep secret that Yosef was trying to tell his brothers. These 11 stars, and now Rav Natan is bringing another element which is connected to what we've learned so far. That is, that these 11 stars are specifically connected those souls that are far from Hashem. But they're really mamish so holy, that they are so holy. However, they are initially in the depths of the klipot, in the depths of the negative forces, what are called the husks or the peels, that initially these souls are thrown down to those places only so that we should be able to elevate all the godliness which fell here at the beginning of creation. However, Hashem made it that ultimately, even though we are sent here for good reasons, our ability to leave from that place is dependent on us, so to speak, bowing down to Yosef. Just like the stars and the moon and the sun have to bow down, or so to speak, nullify themselves to this tzaddik. And through that, we are lifted out from the klipa itself. Because like we learned in the past, Esav, or Samech Mem, or Satan, right? So Esav is how it represents or manifests in the physical world, but spiritually he represents Satan himself. So we know that everybody's scared of Esav, and nobody, including Yaakov Avinu, has the ability to overcome Esav on his own until Yosef comes. And then Yaakov was not scared of Esav anymore. And it said that when everybody bowed down to Esav, Yaakov, Rachel, all of the children of Yaakov, the only one who didn't was Yosef, because Joseph's not scared of Esav, because Joseph is the only one, Rabbi Nachman explains, who is not vulnerable to the negative energy of the Sitra Achra, because he has completely transcended it. And because he has completely transcended it, that he has no vestige left of darkness, whereas other people may have completely overcome it and they don't manifest it. They may never even act on it or think with negativity or act on negativity or feel negativity. But because they have not completely transformed it to the extent that it's only pure light at this point, they're still always vulnerable to Esav. So here we need Yosef in order for these souls which have come down to these dark places to come out. And that's the reason why the Geula, the Mashiach, is dependent on Hikarvit to the Tzaddik. Because we know that the Mashiach can only be revealed when these souls are taken out of the Klipot. And this is the job of Mashiach ben Yosef, who's connected the Tzaddik Yesod Olam. Bichinat achar asar samanei haketoret. This is the concept of the 11 spices of the Ketoret. This is the concept of the 11 stars, because we know that there is this korban, there is the sacrifice that we used to do in the Beit HaMikdash, which was Hashem's favorite. That out of all the korbanot that we did, his favorite was what's called the Ketoret. This is something which Sephardim and Hasidim, because they have Nusach Arizal, and that was what dictated also the Nusach of the Sephardim. They say Ketoret before they say Shachrit and Mincha. And it's a big deal. What's the reason? Because in a deep way, these 11 spices represent all the Jewish people who are sunk in the Klipot. And the one who lights up this spice is the Tzaddik. And he brings out all of these spices and brings them together in harmony, that even though they're all so different and they're all so disconnected and there's a lack of unity and harmony between them, it's through the power, the koach of the tzaddik, that he unites all of these disparate elements and he brings them all together in one unity, in one harmony. And this is connected to the fact that he is the manifestation of the sphere, which is called Yesod. Yesod, which is the foundation, Yesod's function is to unite all opposites. That's the reason why the sphera of Yesod is connected the word Shalom. That whenever you see the word Shalom in the Torah, Shalom is a code word for the Yesod. Now on paper, it's hard to understand. Why should it be that the Yesod, which is connected to sexual purity, have anything to do with peace? And the answer is very deep. And it goes contradictory to normative thinking. That is, a person might come to me and say that I am a slave because I don't watch Netflix, right? I'm not watching certain TV shows because the Torah says that it is prohibited. Now, on paper, this person would say, I am a slave and they're free, right? But like a conversation that I had with somebody about it who hadn't thought about it this way, I said that I could watch it and I choose not to. Whereas you don't even have the ability to stop watching it. You can't stop. And if you said, yes, I could, so then the answer is, so why haven't you been able to? And the answer is because they can't. Why can't they stop? Because they have a degree of ibud. They have a degree of slavery, whether it's mental or psychological or spiritual, that I cannot stop watching this thing. Whereas I have the ability to or not, and I choose not to. This is what the Torah calls freedom, cherut. You know, interestingly, the Torah comes from the word mutar. Torah comes from the word to release. But on paper, it seems to make everything asur. It seems to make everything bound, that I can't do it. However, the real truth is it's releasing you. It's a heter. It comes from the word mutar, heter. That is Torah. How is that? Because it's releasing you from slavery. Because you have two natural elements within yourself. You have your godly soul, your nefesh elokit. That's who you really are. And then you have this thing which Hashem gave you to elevate, to transform, which is called, in the language of the Tanya, your nefesh be'amit, your animal soul. Or Rabbi Nachman refers it simply to as your goof, as your body. And now when your body dictates what you think, feel, and act like, then as a result of that, that's called galut, that's called exile. Your neshama, your inner self, your innermost ratzon has gone into exile. And that's the real cause of the suffering. The suffering is that you're not you, right? That's the reason why after you do all these things, you don't feel more energy. You don't feel more motivation to go succeed and achieve in life. You feel it being stripped of you. You feel less desire to go do the things that you really want to do in your life after you watch X, Y, and Z, after you do X, Y, and Z. And the reason is because your neshama, your inner deepest self, which is called your godly soul, has been exiled. So what is it that gives us the koach to be able to choose our nefesh elokit over our nefesh be'amit, to choose our innermost self, our true, genuine self, our godly soul, the one we were imbued with from before creation, the one in which is going to bring us all the peace that we're looking for, all the faith that we're looking for, all the truth that we're looking for, the connection to others that we're looking for. So all of those things come from the revelation of what's already inside of you. And this was the chiddush of the Baal Shem Tov. And this is what makes Chassidut so empowering and so transformative. That is that the answer is not outside of you. Because if it's outside of you, like normally when somebody called me and they asked me and I forget if they texted me. They asked me when I was in New Jersey this past Shabbat or the Shabbat before that. What is the real difference, let's say, between Musar, right, the traditional way of, so to speak, elevating and working on yourself, and Chassidut, which on paper seems like it's another type of Musar. And I say the main difference is like this. Musar is, so to speak, trying to get you to a level that's outside of yourself. You're not currently holding by a certain place. You want to be holding by that place, but you're not there yet. So Musar is trying to get you to, so to speak, work on yourself to be able to get to that place. However, this is limited. Why? Because it's outside of me. So in some ways, it's always this struggle that I'm never able to attain it because it's not really there. I have to go achieve it. I have to go attain it. I have to go build this thing inside of me. However, according to the Baal Shem Tov, which is a complete paradigm shift, the real truth is you don't need to go anywhere to find these things you've been looking for in your life. They're all inside of you. You simply have to reveal them. Now, on paper, this might not sound like a big difference, or it might just sound like syntax or logistics. Who cares whether it's outside of me or it's inside of me? The answer is that if it's inside of me, now all of a sudden I'm much more motivated and feel hope that I could actually achieve it. Because if it's outside of me, let's say, for instance, that I deal with anger and I want to go achieve peace. So if peace is outside of me and I have to go work and toil and X, Y, and Z to hopefully one day to be able to achieve the sense of inner peace. So this is something that could take me a lifetime, or I may never do it. However, if I understand that according to the Baal Shem Tov, that I have this thing called peace, it's already inside of me. I just have a klipa, I have a shell or a husk or a peel, which is covering over this part of me, which is called peace. And if I could figure out how to remove it, then I'm going to achieve peace instantaneously because it's already there. And then Rabbi Nachman brings it even further that says, to the degree in which you struggle with something, whatever appeal it is that you have, or whatever appeals it are that you do have, whether it's anger, or whether it's sadness, or whether it's anxiety, or whether it's low self-esteem, or whether it's arrogance, or whether it's lack of gratitude. So you have the opposite inside of you. It's literally whatever it is that you struggle with, Rabbi Nachman says, is a key. It's a window into your power, which is within the klipa. And if you know that, now it's even more motivating, like I've spoken about before, that it was this knowledge that allowed me to overcome depression. Because my whole life, I wanted to be happy. But I would need to go outside of myself to go find that thing, through medication, through therapy, through X, Y, and Z. But I was never able to do it. And because at the heart of it, at the root of it, there's this unconscious belief that I never will be able to. Because it's outside of me, that I have a genetic predisposition to depression. And it is what it is, and I just have to deal with it. I have to cope with it. However, it comes along the Baal Shem Tov to say, you have simcha inside of you. You have to, because your nefesh elokit, your godly soul, is happy. And then Rabbi Nachman deepens it and empowers you even more and says, not only that, but the fact that you deal with depression is a sign that you have within that klipa of depression, simcha gedola, a higher level of potential joy than a person who doesn't deal with sadness have. Now, all of a sudden, that even though I'm still depressed, I have the motivation to get up in the morning and to start over again and to try and not to give up, because I know it's inside of me. That even if it takes a day or it takes weeks or it takes months or it takes years, I will find it because it's inside of me. It's not outside of me. But your ability to tap into your own nefesh elokit, your own tzaddik yesod olam inside of you, you need to connect to the actual physical human being that's called the tzaddik, who's attained that level. And through this, it gathers together all the different levels of your soul and brings you to what's called tikkun of the Brit, rectification of your relationship to the physical world, that you're no longer a slave to the physical world, but the physical world becomes a slave to you. And this is the whole ikr of the tzaddik. This is the concept of the 11 stars. Bechinat, like it says in Daniel, which is in the beginning of the Zohar in Bereshit. Umatzdikei arabim kochavim. Which means that when Mashiach comes, those ones who are going to be rewarded the most are those ones who are matzdikei harabim kochavim. Those ones who they are turning the majority of the Jewish people who are in the darkness, in the klipot, into stars. And how are they turning them into stars? By attaching them to the tzaddik. By creating for them a hikashru to the tzaddik, we're turning all of these very precious, very holy, very deep souls which are lost in the secular world, which are disconnected from their spiritual source, which are in exile, which don't feel connection to Hashem, that don't feel connection to their higher self. And all of a sudden, by connecting them to the tzaddik, you have now matzdikei, you have made them into little tzaddikim. You have turned them into stars. But the way to do that, umishtechavim, that they're bowed down to Yosef. Because the tzaddik hagadol, this great tzaddik, draws such wondrous consciousness into them. Shekol hagadolim hakitonim v'chol archokim rotzim likarev. And all those who are distant to Hashem, they want to draw near to Hashem after that. And they all want to receive from Him. Because before this it's explained, it was already explained above that even within the constrictions themselves, there's this aspect of higher consciousness, which is called the truth, and lower consciousness, which is called emunah or faith. But they contain so many levels. There are so many levels of what's called Rav and student, master and student, rabbi and Talmud, Tzaddik and Chassid. That is, that as you're growing spiritually, you have to always understand that you need a Rav, that you need a Tzaddik, you need someone who's above to mashpia to you. Now, lest you think for yourself, okay, well, I've already attained a certain level, I don't need to grow anymore, you're wrong. Or if you feel to yourself, I already attained the level of the Tzaddik, it's impossible. Because there's always levels that are above you. They're always, so to speak, as an upper chokhmah, an upper wisdom, which you have yet to achieve. The answer, there's a question below, does that mean that I need a physical rabbi? So this is really the chiddush of Breslov, and this is what makes, one of the things that makes Breslov very controversial. That is that Rabbi Nachman said that after him, we would not need a physical Rebbe like the Rebbe. That you would need Rabbi Nachman to be that Rebbe. That you need Rabbi Nachman to be that Tzaddik. Now, with that being said, that's all you need, that's great. And Baruch Hashem, Breslov Research Institute, and I don't work for them, I'm just saying it's mamish, it's a wondrous thing that they have translated all of Rabbi Nachman's works pretty much into English. So we have his wisdom available to us. Now, what we need though is obviously a mashpia. We need somebody to be able to teach those teachings to us, somebody who's living with those teachings, someone who's doing his best to learn those teachings every day, someone who's doing his best to live with those teachings every day, to makayim, to experience and to manifest those things that he learns from the tzaddik. So therefore, even though Rabbi Nachman is the tzaddik, and Rabbi Nachman says you don't need anyone else besides me after I pass away in order to be able to achieve this level of hikashrut with Hashem, to be able to achieve emunah with Hashem, which is wondrous, which is amazing, which is very empowering. And at the same time, you still need to find whatever ways, mechanisms, strategies that you can to have hikashrut with Rabbeinu, to have this connection to Rabbi Nachman. Now, obviously, we learned from the 6th lesson of Likutei Moharan that Rabbi Nachman was hinting to this concept of the mashpia. That is, that there's a Moshe Rabbeinu, which is the concept of the Tzaddik Yesod Olam. That's the concept of Yosef. However, there's also his son, his Talmud, and that is called Yoshua ben Nun. And he explains in the 6th Torah that our ability to connect to Moshe is also talui, it's dependent on being connected to Yoshua. Because the light of Moshe Rabbeinu is so great, that Kiv Yachol, it is literally the light of the Ein Sof. It is the light of the Infinite One himself. So therefore, as a result of that, how do I connect with the light of Hashem? The whole point was that tzaddik is supposed to bring down, to contract that light for me. However, that light still, after it's been contracted, is too intense. So therefore, we have this concept of Yoshua, that Hashem said to Moshe, you're not going to bring the Jewish people into the land of Israel. And one of the deeper reasons is because the light is too intense. We need somebody we can relate to, so to speak, more than Moshe. That even though Moshe needs to be at the source, he needs to be the ikar reason, he needs to be the wisdom in which we use to get into the land of Israel. However, we need somebody who is Rabbi Nachman's devoted, self-sacrificing student to actually be, so to speak, the leader of the Jewish people that takes the people into the land of Israel. This is the concept of Yoshua ben Nun. That in his lifetime, Rabbi Nachman had anointed Rav Natan through many different ways to be that person. But ultimately, in the final generation, we are going to need as well this concept of Yoshua ben Nun, this concept of the mashpia, the one who's able to bring down Rabbi Nachman's teachings for the generation, so that the light of the tzaddik can be again constricted, so that everyone, it becomes accessible to everybody. And the way in which the Mashpia does this is because his soul is more connected to what's called the sphere of Malchut. And because all the Jewish people are connected to the sphere that's called Malchut or Emunah, so Malchut is the vessel which receives the light of Yesod and brings it down to the whole world. Yesod is the Tzaddik, Yesod is Yosef, Yesod is Rabbi Nachman, right, for us. Remember, we need Malchut. We need that sphere which is below it, the last sphere, to constrict that light again one more time and to give it out to all the Jewish people. This Malchut is the concept of Yoshua ben Nun. It's the concept of David. It's the concept of Mashiach, that he is going to take that light one more time and contract it over. And the way that he does it is because he appears to be just like everybody else. He has the same struggles as everybody else. He looks like everybody else. He struggles with the same thing as everybody else. And as a result of that, because of externally how you can relate to him, so now you're able to draw down those teachings of the Tzaddik through that person. And this is why the Mashiach is directly connected to the Tzaddik, because they are husband and wife. However, the light of the Tzaddik needs to be revealed. Moshe needs to be revealed through the Mashiach. And that's why it says in the Midrashim that Moshe and the Mashiach are going to come down together. They're going to be revealed together because they're one part and parcel with each other. We need both of them. We need Yosef and we need Yehuda. Shemesh v'yareach, the sun and the moon. That we need this concept of the sun and the moon, meaning the rabbi and the student, to nullify themselves before this great tzaddik, before Yosef. Because it's he who instills perceptions of godliness into all of them. Meaning, he's saying, so to speak, that there's two types of Jews. There's a type of Jew who's like a Rav, meaning that he himself has achieved some type of spiritual madrega, some type of level in which he has nullified himself to Hashem, that he learns his Torah, that he does the mitzvot, that he teaches it to others, that he's busy trying to have devekut with Hashem. And then there is the majority of Jewish people that they're not at that level yet, and they are what's called the Talmud, the student. However, Rabbi Nachman says that the sun and the moon both need to bow down to Yosef. Why? Because that person who's considered the Rav, in relationship to the tzaddik, he's considered the student. And therefore, even though he may have felt that he has achieved this level of the sun, he's still really in relationship to the tzaddik like the moon. And therefore, the ability to bring the geula is dependent on, so to speak, those rabbanut, the rabbis, realizing that there still is somebody who knows more than them and nullifying themselves to that tzaddik. And those people who feel that they're actually so far like us, that we actually realize that we're very close. And this is the whole ikar of Yosef, that Yosef is able to make those people who feel that they're so far, to make them realize that they're actually very close. And at the same time, he has the koach to show those people who already feel that they have achieved it, who already feel that they have reached the level of closeness to Hashem. He actually shows those people that they're still very far. This is the end of the fourth halacha in Likuyet Moharan. And this is the main idea, that Rabbi Nachman says that the most important thing that any Jewish person can do in their whole entire life, and he says this explicitly, and Rabbi Nachman is not one to exaggerate. He's not one to, so to speak, he didn't come in the age of social media, that we need to hype up everything that you should be interested in and listen. Everything he said was exact. And he said that if a person understood what it meant to have a real tzaddik in their life, he would realize it's the most important thing in his life to be able to find this person and to connect to him, because it's through this that he achieves tikkun, rectification, healing in every area of his life. And obviously, whatever we're doing in our life is to be able to do those things anyway. If, for instance, I'm struggling because I have emotional or psychological issues, so if I know that the tzaddik is the answer for that, so then I'm going to invest all my energies not in trying to find the best psychiatrist, but in trying to find the greatest tzaddik. Let's say, for instance, I struggle with finances. So we know that when we went into a drought and everybody didn't have food to eat or money, they had to come to Yosef, because Yosef was made the viceroy of Paro, that he became, so to speak, the hub in which all Parnasa, all Shefa comes from. So too, your answer again is the tzaddik. That we know, even for instance, like a very famous Mashpia Breslov, that is Rav Shalom Arush, that how did he connect to Rabbi Nachman? from what I heard, from what I understand, he had tremendous debt that you couldn't fathom. That would put a person into yeush, that he would feel that he has no chance to ever, not only, let's say, basically have what he needs, but even not to have this all around his neck of debt that many people in our generation actually feel, because the Western world has convinced us that the only way to achieve in life is to go through many years of higher education, only that we should owe the government hundreds of thousands of dollars and then spend the next all of our professional career paying it off. But that Rabbi Nachman teaches that the tzaddik is actually the holder of all the parnasa. Now you may ask yourself, why is it that the tzaddik himself is not wealthy? And Rabbi Nachman teaches in the Likuyet Halachot, the reason is because he chooses to push away the wealth. That in truth, he does have all the money, meaning it is coming to him. However, Rabbi Nachman says that this tzaddik, because he has reached the level of complete bitul, that he has nullified himself completely to the higher good, that is the good of the Jewish people, he has decided instead to transform and convert that parnasa, which is physical, for spiritual parnasa that's called da'at, that he should reach higher levels of consciousness and to give that parnasa to the Jewish people instead, to those people who need it. So whether you need finances, or you need mental health, or you need physical health, or you need anything, self-confidence, whatever it is that is your struggle. So Rabbi Nachman is teaching that the source for your healing, your rectification in this area comes from your attachment to what's called the tzaddik emet. So what are ways practically that we can connect to Yosef? So we're learning that in his dreams, all of these things are, so to speak, bowing down to him. What does it mean that they're bowing down to him? It doesn't mean chas v'shalom they believe he is some type of deity or God. Nobody believes that. And in fact, if you do, it's called avodah zarah, which we know that Rabbi Nachman was completely against. And he says that the whole ikar and koach of the tzaddik is he's able to eliminate avodah zarah, belief in false beliefs, investment in false beliefs. So what is this bowing down? It's called bitul. That means, like Chazal, the sages taught us, that we need to not just choose a spiritual master, but we need to subdue ourselves to him. That is, that we understand that no matter how much we think we know, no matter how much we feel we know, no matter how much belief we have in our own intelligence, in our own emotional capabilities, in our own actions, we need to understand that there's always a level which is higher than us. And that level is always held with the tzaddik. And therefore, if it's always higher than mine, then even though what he tells me to do might not make sense to me, that's not a steer to the fact that what he's saying is true. Because the whole reason why I'm struggling is the fact that I'm going with my own sense, is the fact that I'm going with my own emotional state. I'm going with my own actions, because all of those actions and feelings and thoughts are coming from a lower consciousness. And that lower consciousness is what's making us feel enslaved to Mitzrayim, to physicality, to the secular world, to our lower selves. However, by attaching ourselves to the one who was never enslaved, just like Moshe Rabbeinu was never a slave in Egypt, because he represents the tzaddik. And as a result of that, he can't be enslaved to Paro. And so too all the Levi'im, meaning all those people who are connected to the tzaddik, they're also not slaves to Paro. And therefore, when you connect yourself to the tzaddik and to his students, now you have a chance yourself by having sikot chaverim, that is, you talk to your friends, like what we're doing right now, that we all understand that we are not this concept of the tzaddik. That's the first step. Already you've achieved the level of humility. And now that we feel and we know that we've found one for ourselves. So now all we need to do, and it's the hardest thing in the world to do, but at least we know that this is the step. We now have to have something called bitul. We need to nullify our own preconceived notions about what's good and what's real to a spiritual master who actually knows. And the more that we nullify ourselves to that, the more blessing we will see in our life. And what's the deeper reason for this? Because Rabbi Nachman explains that all of us, so to speak, we see the world through our own power of imagination, through our own faculties of imagination. And so this is a very deep Hasidic and Kabbalistic concept. We're not going to go so far into it, but suffice it to say, that means that we see all of the world through our heart. And because we see all of the world through our heart, no matter how much we might know intellectually, because our hearts are not rectified, we're not able to actually think or see clearly. So therefore, it's our, so to speak, subduing our heart to the mind of the tzaddik, that we are able to achieve rectification of our heart and see through our heart what Rabbi Nachman says he saw through his own mind. And this is what Rabbi Nachman said at the end of his life, that there's one thing that I've given all of my students, to all of those who have dedicated themselves to me in their lifetime. They will experience in their power of imagination what I experienced through my own das, through my own godly soul, through my own mind. And Rabbi Nachman, why is this so much more important now, so to speak, than ever? Because Rabbi Nachman said there's a flood that's coming into the world. And that flood is not one of water. It's not one of lack of food. It's not one of lack of drink. It's going to be a flood that's called the power of imagination is going to flood the world. So if the power of imagination is going to flood the world, the power of imagination is not good or bad. Imagination can be redemptive. However, when the power of imagination is coming from a broken heart, and that's what's flooding over the world, and we don't have the power of imagination to use it properly, then we're all going to be seeing the world through our own distorted, darkened hearts. And that's the cause of all of our emotional, psychological, and physical suffering. However, if we're all able to achieve clear, pure powers of imagination through bittul to the tzaddik, then as a result of that, the fact that the flood of imagination has swept over the world is not a problem. It's actually the cause of our redemption, because now through that imagination which is flooded over the world, we can use it to actually see what the tzaddik saw with his mind. And then we have Geula and we have redemption. Anybody have any questions from this lesson?
Rabbi?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you're saying we're supposed to have one true tzaddik, and then the person we learn from. Now, this person we learn from, we're talking about he has to be a great Gaon, where he has to have the master of Gemara, Halacha, and all the other details. We could turn to him in any questions and concerns. Hey, we have this problem. How do you interrupt this Gemara? So now we have to have two rabbis, where one we go for the Chassidut, the Rabbi Nachman, and then the other one we have to learn all the other things, all the other major works as well.
Like Hashkafa and Halacha. One rabbi for Hashkafa and one rabbi for Halacha.
I understand.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good. So in essence, that is a good system. Ultimately, obviously, best case scenario, you can pray for this, is that your mashpia, the one who's teaching you Rabbi Nachman's Torah, also is baki and halacha, right? But this is something that I did. For instance, when I was in yeshiva, right, I had my rabbi there and I asked him questions for halacha. But when it came to anything else that had to do with my spiritual life, this was only for me in the hands of Rabbi Nachman. And they don't contradict each other, because Rabbi Nachman says that you must follow the Shulchan Aruch. So therefore, he would be a big fan of you having a rabbi who teaches you what to do in different halachic situations. But Lamaisa, at the end of the day, how it manifests itself is, so to speak, I have this mashpia, someone who's teaching me Rabbi Nachman's teachings, right? And I also have a Rav, someone who is giving me all of the psak that I need, all of the understanding and halakha that I need personally and in my different situations in my life. And ultimately, you can continue to pray that they should become one person. Obviously, that would be ideal.
Another question, sorry.
Sure.
You talked about that the person who is a Gaon, a true Rabbi, he has to be submissive where he doesn't have physical desires. We see that Kohen Gadol and Moshe Rabbeinu, all the other great tzaddikim, they were filthy rich. They had the wealth. They just knew how to approach it and basically handle it the right way. So isn't it like we have to have a Kohen Gadol that is rich as well, so we can respect him and do everything for him? At the same time, he has a spiritual and a physical.
Okay, so it's a good question. I'll tell you like this. When did Moshe Rabbeinu become wealthy? For the majority of his life, he was actually very poor. For almost all of his life. When did he become wealthy? Only when he brought down the Torah from Har Sinai. And he was already 80 years old. So what happened? So it's explained there that when he brought down the Luchot, that it says, this is posel. This is poselet for you. So the Gemara explains that at that point, Hashem, so to speak, gave him the shavings of the Luchot, the shavings of those tablets, and those became his wealth. Okay? This was towards the end of his life. Now, Rabbi Nachman explains in Likuyet Halachot, what does that mean? Those shavings are, so to speak, connected to halacha. The deeper understanding here is that Rabbi Nachman says that wealth is connected to halacha. This is actually why you see often that people who are very big poskim, they also often have money as well. But on the simple level, what we're understanding is it was at the point which they had completely nullified their own desire for money that Hashem gave them wealth.
I don't have a question. I have a comment.
Sure.
Paul says that provide yourself with the teaching, free yourself of doubt. This summer, just keeping it real simple, I attempted and I did build a deck onto my house in the backyard, right? I'm no carpenter. I have no skills as far as carpentry is concerned, but I did this without a guide or without like a person who was a carpenter. And it came out like a deck. It came out pretty good. There was some rough edges and some things that, I could have done better if I had a guide. But I think this is the ikar of the whole thing is that you have somebody that you can free yourself of doubt. Like you can practice and teach or practice the teachings of Rebbe Nachman, and you will look like a chassid, but there may be some rough edges, or there may be some things that may not be right and exact unless you have a teacher that can knock off those rough edges and free yourself of doubt. So I think that that's the simplicity of it. That you can study a book about performing the surgery, right? But if you don't actually have a doctor who can guide you through that, it may not come out so good.
Right. Beautiful, beautiful, very nice, Lior. And this is, it's pretty. Just to make it very simple, we're in the end of exile. We're in the end of Galut. Rabbi Nachman is saying that the Tzaddik is the concept of the sun, of the Shemesh. There is no sun at nighttime. So how do we get light? We get it from the moon. And Rabbi Nachman himself is alluding to the fact that his student, who is the Mashpia, he is the moon to his sun. And that's where we get light from in the dark time, in the nighttime. That is at the end of exile. So the only way we're going to be able to receive the light of the sun, which we need, which is the source of all healing, which is the source of all blessing, which is the source of all nutrients, which is the source of all life force, at nighttime, the only way to do that at the end of exile before the Mashiach comes is to get it from the moon. And those are his students.
Now I have my question, real quick. So it's in this particular halakha, it says that holy souls born into this world as non-Jews, right? So is it possible, or does it happen that a soul in the Shama is born into this world, into a non-Jewish goof, and he or she goes throughout the life of this transmigration without the realization that, that they have a Jewish neshama, and do they have to continue to come back and toil and come back until that realization, or is it our responsibility, because we don't know who has a a Jewish neshama? What is our responsibility? Because like Yosef Hasadik was just like his father Yaakov, who converted or brought those that were far from Hashem closer to Hashem. How is that? Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we learn in Likuyet Halachot that actually something very interesting. That is that when we give tzedakah, and the higher level tzedakah that we give, says what ultimately happens is a spiritual mechanism that takes place, and this tzedakah that we give actually causes those Jewish souls that are, so to speak, trapped in these bodies that don't realize that they are they're actually Jewish. so therefore they're non-Jews. It causes their neshama to awaken and arouse. Rabbi Nachman explains in Likuyet Halachot that what will happen, so to speak, is they'll look at a book, and all of a sudden they'll start to see discrepancies that they hadn't seen before in the books in which they had been learning or they've been practicing spiritually. And these discrepancies will then cause them, so to speak, to externally go look for greater truth and find Hashem. However, what is it that actually causes those non-Jews to realize that they are Jewish and to ultimately convert? So Rabbi Nachman says very interestingly, it's the tzedakah that Jews give at the highest level. When they give tzedakah at the highest level, this, so to speak, is a mechanism which ignites those souls which are, so to speak, sleeping within those people to then awaken and then decide that they want to convert, because in fact they really are Jewish souls that are placed in those places. Now, so that's one thing to keep in mind, okay? The other thing is that the Gemara makes it very clear that the only reason we went into exile is in order to bring back converts. Now, it's very hard to understand this because Judaism is literally the only religion or spiritual edifice which does not encourage conversion. It doesn't mean that we don't want anybody to become Jewish. Obviously, the Torah says more times than any other mitzvah to love the ger. So obviously, one of the most beautiful things in the world is when a non-Jewish person decides in their heart of hearts that they want to be Jewish. However, we don't actually actively engage in encouraging it. Now, with that being said, the Gemara says, sorry, one second. The Gemara says that we went into exile only to bring back those people. So the question is, if we're not encouraging it, so how are they coming back? And the answer is multiple things. One is the tzedakah that we give. The greater amount of tzedakah that we give, the more we're able to bring back those souls. Also, the way that we eat at the table, as actually Rabbi Nachman says, connected to the souls of Gerim. So when we eat in a more dignified, more honorable, more mindful way, we actually as well cause the souls of converts to come back. Another thing is that all of the souls are connected of humanity, and for sure the Jewish people. So now what happens is Rabbi Nachman explains that when a person grows spiritually, automatically those who are connected to his soul then are raised up with him. So therefore, for instance, let's say a person who is a Baal Tshuva, he now, before this, he was not connected to Hashem, now that he is. So now that he is, automatically, whatever those souls that are most connected to his souls, automatically, wherever they are in the world, start to elevate spiritually as well. They start to have a deeper ratzon to get closer to Hashem as well. So with your own personal growth, every step that you take spiritually, you are automatically dragging along all of those souls who, so to speak, are connected to your soul, which are but behind you. So there's many elements to this, but those are a few elements just off the top of my head.
Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Rabbeinu?
I just want to make sure that there's questions first. Usually have a statement. You have a question or a statement?
Statement.
So wait with the statement.
All right.
There's a question here. If you could just put yourself back on mute, that'd be great. The yeshiva is nice and bumping over there. Thank you. Do you mean that we're in so much darkness, but we're not even aware of it because we have accustomed ourselves to the darkness? Yes, beautiful. This is exactly what Rabbi Nachman teaches, that in the final generation, there's going to be something called a concealment within a concealment. It is hinted to in the Torah where Hashem says, Hastir, Hastir, I'm going to hide myself, but it has a double language of hide myself. So why is it saying I'm going to hide myself or I'm going to doubly hide myself? So Rabbi Nachman says that in the final generation, as opposed to in the past, where there's a concealment of Hashem, meaning we don't feel that Hashem is with us, and that causes us anguish, in the final generation, it'll be a concealment within a concealment. That means that not only will Hashem, so to speak, be hiding from us, but it will be so concealed that we won't even realize that there's a problem. That we are so, like you said, used to the darkness, that we're so used to being disconnected from happiness. We're so used to being disconnected from peace. We're so used to being disconnected from love. We're so used to being disconnected from unity. Then as a result of all of these things, we don't even know that there's a problem, or we don't know what the root of the problem is. And we end up looking in a million other places for it. This is called the concealment within a concealment. And this is why the sages of 2,000 years ago said that please bring the Mashiach as soon as possible, but please don't let me be in that generation. Because it's understood that a final generation would have to go through what we're going through now, that is the concealment within a concealment. That the majority of the people in the world don't even realize that the source of our problems is the lack of our connection to the source and root of our reality. And this is actually the main cause of the suffering. So therefore, the first step in nullifying the concealment within a concealment is we need to shatter the first one. That is to reorient everybody to the fact that the reason and source of the causes of our challenges is the fact that we're not close to Hashem. And all of a sudden, we have now knocked out one concealment. We're still left with the concealment of we're not close to Hashem, right? We still don't feel it, but at least we know now that that's the source of the issue. And this is the reason why Amunah, the Amunah that Rabbi Nachman says needs to sweep over the world, because Amunah reorients you to the fact that everything comes from Hashem. And now that you know that everything comes from Hashem, you have knocked away the first concealment. And now you can go run after the truth. And that is going to take time. That's going to take patience. That's going to take a lot of learning. That's going to take a lot of self-sacrifice. But through that process, you now knock away the second concealment, and you actually have closeness to Hashem. Any other questions? Before you have a statement, any other questions? Okay, one last announcement, and then David's gonna take it away. Tonight we have another class in Likuyet Halachot. We just started an amazing Torah on Purim, on Yitro, on bringing back these Jewish people, our role in this, and also that part of ourself, which is called the ger that we need to bring back. The concept of Amunah, the concept of dancing, the concept of clapping, the concept of Simcha. All of these are part of the 10th lesson of Likuyet Halachot, as well as attachment to this true tzaddik and how to do it. So all of these, please don't miss it. These lessons are so vital, so important. I know that you guys are getting a lot of it from Sion, thank God, which is a huge blessing. But you don't realize that you're getting 7 lessons a week right now in Rabbi Nachman's Torah. This is that it's a chiddush in the whole world. I didn't even realize this. That when Rav Chaim Kramer, who was one of the biggest mashpiyas in the world and the cause of literally thousands and thousands of people, me included, having hikashrut to Rabbi Nachman, are in his zchut because he translated all these books to English and gave a commentary that we should understand it. So apparently when he found out that we were teaching Likuyet Halachot 4 times a week, this is even before he created Sion, he was so excited about this, and he was so surprised by this, that he decided when he flew out to America to come visit us, not for any money, not for nothing, and to go machazik us. And he called me afterwards and was like, David, you have to keep going. This is unbelievable what's happening. And now, Baruch Hashem, we're at 7 classes a week. Please do not take it for granted. Take advantage of every single class. If you're not here live to attend in Queens, to come tonight at 9 p.m. for Od Yosef Chai, come online on Zoom. Do everything that you can. And if for some reason you're not able to come online on Zoom, watch it after the case. But, the more that you bring in these teachings into your life, the easier it will be for you to, so to speak, receive the light of the sun, which is the cause of healing in your life. It's not enough to go do hibodedut even. It's not enough just to learn the teachings as well. It is the ability to do both, to learn and to pray. To pray, learn, pray, as Rabbi Nachman says. Pray, right? That you should be able to experience what you need in order to get closer to Hashem, learn it in the class, and then go back to your hibodedut and pray to actualize what you learned. And through doing this, you bring your own personal geula and the geula of the Jewish people closer and closer every single day. B'ezrat Hashem, we should see the Mashiach soon in our days. David Meirov, take it away.
Like we always learned before in Likuyet Halachot, that during the day represents Geulah, and the night represents Galut.
Beautiful. Exactly. You got it.
Because
Very good.
during the day we always have Geulah.
Right. And the deeper reason that we're learning is because the sun has its own light, whereas the moon has no light of its own, like the Zohar says. It only receives the light from the sun. There's one more question here. Go ahead. Shoot.
Hi. Thank you for your classes. I have a question. So how are you supposed to navigate the darkness? Like if you're aware there's darkness and then you how what are we supposed to do besides connect to Hashem? Or is that all we're really supposed to do?
So that's a great question. So first off, you should thank Hashem that you know that there's darkness and where it's coming from, because that means that you've already eliminated one concealment. And Rabbi Nachman says that's the hardest concealment to remove. Okay, so you already have a big merit that you're able to do so. Now, in addition to that, what is it that's actually going to bring me light? It is actual connection to Hashem now. Besides the fact that you know now that it's the distance, so to speak, between you and Hashem on paper that's causing the problem, now I have to go run after Hashem. And the running after Hashem comes with learning and actualizing the Tzaddik's teachings. So therefore, every day, what would be, so to speak, my basic mode that's going to bring me closer to that light so the darkness goes away? That is, I learn the Tzaddik's teachings, and then I have a time in my day that I do Hibodedut, that I speak to Hashem and I ask Hashem, please help me to go experience and to achieve and to actualize those things that I learned in my actual life. Like Rabbi Nachman says, that I learn the Torah, not just learning, I'm learning it in order to do it. Meaning my mindset when I come into a class is not just, I want more wisdom. Because Rabbi Nachman says, in fact, that a person who keeps accruing more wisdom and it doesn't actually manifest in action, it causes more suffering. So the main thing is that you turn the wisdom into action. You do that by praying for it. So let's say, for instance, just a practical example. What did I learn from this class? This class is all about bitul to the tzaddik. That is, that my source of blessing, my ability to receive the light of Hashem comes from my nullifying myself to the advice and the wisdom of the tzaddik. So therefore, I would go now, later on in the day, into my hibodedut. I say to Hashem, Hashem, please, help me that whatever it is that I learned from Rabbi Nachman, whatever advice that he gives me, whether it makes sense or it doesn't make sense, help me to have the strength, help me to have the conviction, help me to have the self-sacrifice to be able to do it despite the fact that I don't want to, or despite the fact that I don't have the energy for it, despite the fact that doesn't make sense in the normative, modern, secular world. And by doing and having that prayer, you're now going to have the power and the koach to go actualize it. And when you do it, you're going to see that you feel closer to Hashem and you're going to have more light in your life.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So is this like Purim? Like, is this like the same?
Yes. So this is
I
what
understand, but I'm still confused. I don't know if it's just so deep
like
for
Purim.
me that it.
Yeah, this is just
Okay.
this is just like Purim. In fact, Rabbi Nachman is going to teach us tonight, Bezrat Hashem, in Likuyet Moharan, Torah 10, Yud, this exact paradigm, that Purim is this concept of that we have a collective geula from complete darkness, that we know that Purim is the time. This is the only story in the entire Torah that Hashem's name is not mentioned once, because it's the concept of concealment within a concealment. And Esther, her name represents hiddenness, because the name comes from the word Hester, which means hidden, meaning she herself doesn't even realize that the problem is that Hashem is not close. She represents all of us. Now, how do we achieve our geula? The way was that Esther was raised by Mordechai, meaning that Mordechai is the concept of the tzaddik, that Mordechai teaches Esther that she's Jewish and that she needs to go reveal it to the world. And she does that through her attachment to Mordechai. And through that, she is able not only to reveal that she is Jewish, but she is the cause of the geula for the entire Jewish people because she does so. So that's each of us. But this is all going to be explained much more in the lesson that we're going to learn tonight.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, everybody have an amazing day. And Bezrat Hashem, I hope to see everybody here at 9 p.m. tonight, whether in person is the best, 9 p.m. in Od Yosef Chai in Queens, on Main Street, or on Zoom. Everybody have an amazing night.